The late 1990s marked the twilight of an era in Philippine cinema, a period when Fernando Poe Jr., FPJ, the King of Philippine Movies, continued to personify courage, justice, and compassion in every role he played. Among the films that defined this late career brilliance was Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel, 1998, a film that not only carried FPJ's signature brand of heroism, but also resonated with the changing spirit of a nation caught between hope and disillusionment. Directed by Heriberto Villarin and produced under FPJ Productions, Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel, was more than just another action movie. It was a story of vengeance, redemption, and the haunting weight of time, wrapped in the gritty and emotional realism that FPJ's characters always embodied. 1. The world that shaped Daniel. The movie opens in a remote province in the Philippines, far from the chaos of the city. The air is thick with tension as local farmers struggle against the control of a ruthless syndicate, which has slowly turned the once peaceful land into a private kingdom of corruption and fear. Amidst this darkness, the villagers whisper the name Daniel, a man who once lived among them, who once fought for their rights, but who vanished without a trace years ago after a tragic betrayal. Now, as oppression deepens and lawlessness reigns, the legend of Daniel becomes a story of hope, the kind of hope that only FPJ's characters could ignite. 2. The Return. We first meet Daniel, played by FPJ, in a small coastal town. He works quietly at a boatyard, living a humble life under a new identity. His eyes, though calm, carry the shadow of a man who's seen too much, a man haunted by the ghosts of his past. Through flashbacks, we learn that Daniel was once a respected soldier who led his men with integrity, but when a corrupt superior betrayed him and framed him for a crime he didn't commit, he was forced into hiding. The betrayal not only cost him his freedom, but also the life of his younger brother, who died trying to prove Daniel's innocence. These scenes are executed with quiet power. FPJ doesn't need many words. His silence, his stare, and his controlled gestures tell everything. The film's cinematography captures this duality, wide shots of calm seas against Daniel's stormy soul. 3. A Call from the Past. One day, a young woman named Elena, played by Patria Plata, arrives at the boatyard. She's searching for a man named Daniel, bringing with her a desperate plea for help. Her father, once Daniel's closest ally, has been kidnapped by the same men who now control their hometown. Daniel initially refuses. He says he's done with fighting, claiming that revenge and justice are for younger men. But when Elena tells him that the syndicate leader is none other than Colon Mendez, the same man who betrayed him years ago, Daniel's composure breaks. The music swells, a haunting blend of guitar and brass as FPJ looks out toward the horizon. The sea breeze brushes his face. He clenches his fist, and we know the warrior has returned. 4. The Homecoming. Daniel's return to his hometown is the emotional centerpiece of Part 1. What was once a vibrant farming community is now a town living under military rule. The people who remember Daniel greet him with both joy and fear, knowing that his presence could bring both salvation and bloodshed. In one gripping sequence, Daniel visits his brother's grave. He kneels before it, his face carved with grief and determination. "Hindi pa tapos ang laban mo, kapatid," he whispers. "Your fight isn't over." The scene perfectly encapsulates FPJ's enduring screen persona, a man of few words but unbreakable will, bound by loyalty and justice. 5. Rising conflict. Daniel begins dismantling the syndicate's operations from the shadows. Using his military training, he ambushes armed convoys, rescues villagers, and sabotages supply routes. These action sequences, classic FPJ style, are grounded, intense, and practical. Each punch, gunshot, and explosion feels earned, not exaggerated. Meanwhile, Colonel Mendez, played by Paquito Diaz, begins to suspect that Daniel is alive. When one of his men confirms it, Mendez snarls, "Then hell itself will come for him." The two men's rivalry is more than personal. It's ideological. Daniel represents honor and justice. Mendez represents greed and betrayal. 6. The price of vengeance. As Daniel's rebellion gains momentum, the syndicate strikes back. Elena's father is executed publicly as a warning to others, and the townspeople are terrorized. Daniel's allies begin to question whether his return has brought salvation or destruction. The emotional heart of the film surfaces when Daniel confronts his guilt for the deaths caused in his name. FPJ portrays this moment with remarkable restraint. Tears never fall, but his trembling voice and downcast gaze reveal a man at war with his conscience. In one scene, Elena tells him, "You came back to save us, but maybe you also came back to save yourself." That line becomes the turning point. Daniel vows not just to take revenge, but to restore justice, to cleanse his name and free his people. 7. The setup for Part 2. The film's first part ends with Daniel preparing for an all-out confrontation. The final scene shows him in the mountains, surrounded by a growing band of villagers, rebels, and former soldiers. They light torches, their faces illuminated by fire and purpose. Daniel stands before them, his voice steady. "They took our land, our lives, our dignity. Now we take them back." As the camera pans out, the music crescendos, a mixture of patriotic melody and battle drums, signaling the coming storm. The screen fades to black with the words, "To be continued." Behind-the-scenes facts, Part 1. Director and production. Heriberto Villarin's collaboration with FPJ was praised for balancing traditional action with deep emotional storytelling. Filming locations. Shot primarily in Bataan and Cavite, known for their lush landscapes and rugged terrains. FPJ's preparation. FPJ personally choreographed some of the action sequences, ensuring they remained grounded and realistic. Box office performance. Upon release, Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel was one of the top-grossing Filipino action films of 1998. Critical response. Critics noted FPJ's restrained yet powerful performance, calling it one of his most mature portrayals of a hero haunted by morality and memory. Themes and Symbolism Part 1. Redemption through justice. Daniel's return is symbolic of moral reckoning, a man confronting his sins by fighting the corruption that birthed them. The ghost of betrayal. Betrayal defines Daniel's transformation, turning a loyal soldier into a reluctant avenger. Rural decay and hope. The film subtly reflects the social decay in provincial life, a commentary on the neglect of rural Filipinos by those in power. Tone and cinematic style. Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel, combines FPJ's signature brand of cinematic patriotism with a darker, more reflective tone. The pacing of the first half allows the audience to dwell on Daniel's inner struggle, making the later action scenes feel like emotional release rather than spectacle. Every gunfight, every stare-down, and every quiet conversation carries emotional weight. The film's visual palette, golden sunsets, stormy skies, and dimly lit interiors, mirrors Daniel's internal duality, light and shadow, peace and violence.
Part 2 opens in the misty dawn of the mountains. The villagers, armed with makeshift weapons, old rifles, and courage, stand beside Daniel, waiting for his command. The scene mirrors the birth of a revolution. FPJ, with his calm authority, surveys his people. His eyes are no longer burdened by the past. They burn with purpose. Mang Tomas, Johnny Delgado, asks him, "Are you sure about this, Daniel? Once we start, there's no turning back." Daniel responds, "They took everything from us when they betrayed the law. Now we take back our right to live as free men." The line echoes across the mountain valley as the camera pans out, showing smoke rising from the village below, the mark of a system that's been exploiting the powerless for too long. 2. The counterattack begins. The next series of sequences mark the shift from emotional buildup to relentless action, a hallmark of FPJ's style. Daniel and his group infiltrate one of Col Mendez's logging camps. The scene is shot in dim light, giving a sense of danger and realism. The rebels move quietly between trucks and wooden crates filled with illegal timber. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out. One of Daniel's men is spotted. A gunfight erupts, echoing through the forest. FPJ takes command, using guerrilla tactics to outsmart the enemy. Every bullet fired, every move executed shows the precision of a man who knows the price of failure. He captures one of Mendez's trusted lieutenants, forcing him to reveal the location of the syndicate's command center. The lieutenant hesitates, but a single glare from FPJ breaks him. "Tell me where he is," Daniel says softly, a tone so calm it's terrifying. When the man finally talks, Daniel spares him, a reflection of FPJ's moral compass. Violence for his character is never an act of vengeance, it is an act of necessity. 2. 3. Elena's courage. Elena continues to serve as the film's emotional anchor. While Daniel represents justice, she embodies compassion, the part of humanity that the war threatens to erase. In one of the film's most heartfelt scenes, she tends to a wounded child after the battle. "If we killed to survive, we must also learn to heal to live," she tells Daniel. The line softens Daniel's heart. For a moment we see the soldier replaced by a man, one who dreams of peace even as he walks through bloodshed. Their growing bond doesn't turn romantic in the conventional sense, rather it's rooted in shared pain and mutual respect, an emotional connection born of tragedy. 4. The betrayal within. As Daniel prepares for the final assault on Mendez's stronghold, a shocking twist emerges. One of his own men, Berto, betrays him by leaking their plan in exchange for money and safe passage. This betrayal mirrors Daniel's past, the original wound that drove him into exile. When Daniel discovers the truth, he confronts Berto in a tense, silent standoff. "Why?" Daniel asks. Berto answers, trembling, "Because I'm tired of fighting for a dream that won't come true." Daniel lowers his gun and says, "Dreams die only when men stop believing." But before Berto can redeem himself, he's killed by Mendez's sniper, a poetic punishment for treachery. FPJ stands over his fallen comrade, eyes full of sorrow rather than anger. This moment solidifies Daniel's role not just as a fighter, but as a tragic hero, a man constantly betrayed by those around him, yet still unwilling to lose his humanity. 5. The final battle. The climax of Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel, is one of the most powerful and cinematic sequences in FPJ's late filmography. Mendez's forces raid the village at dawn, torching homes and capturing the elderly. The air is thick with smoke and chaos, but Daniel and his men are ready. From the mountains they descend like a wave of justice. The film shifts into full FPJ-style action, slow-motion gunfights, hand-to-hand combat, explosions timed with orchestral swells. FPJ's iconic fighting style, clean, powerful, and deeply emotional, is on full display. In one breathtaking sequence, Daniel single-handedly storms Mendez's command post, taking down a dozen soldiers with precision and calm fury. His movements are deliberate, every strike feels like judgment. Finally, Daniel and Mendez face each other amid burning debris. "You should have stayed dead," Mendez sneers. Daniel replies, "Men like me don't die. We just wait for justice to rise again." A brutal fight follows, fists, knives, and desperation. When Mendez finally falls, Daniel doesn't shoot him. Instead, he hands the gun to Elena and says, "Let the law decide." But before Mendez can be arrested, one of his own men shoots him in panic. Justice, once again, comes not from violence, but from fate. 6. Redemption and peace. With the syndicate dismantled and the town freed, Daniel faces his final trial, forgiveness. In a quiet, emotional scene, he visits his brother's grave again. The land around it, once scarred by war, is green again. He kneels, removes his gun belt, and lays it beside the tombstone. "Wala nang laban," he says softly. "My fight is over." The camera lingers on FPJ's face as a tear finally falls, the only one in the entire film. Elena approaches and asks, "What will you do now?" Daniel smiles faintly. "I will live, not as a soldier, but as a man." The final shot shows him walking away toward the horizon, the setting sun casting his shadow long over the land, a poetic farewell to both the character and, symbolically, to FPJ's long legacy of righteous heroes. The credits roll as the theme song, Pagbabalik ng Bayani, plays, a moving ballad about sacrifice, duty, and redemption. 7. Behind the scenes and production facts. Filming. Shot across rugged terrains in Bataan and Batangas, the film utilized real local communities for authenticity. FPJ personally selected several extras from the area, wanting the film to feel lived in. Action choreography. FPJ choreographed many of his own stunts. At 59, he still performed his signature moves, leaping over obstacles, tackling opponents, and shooting from the hip with precision. Music and sound design. The soundtrack combined Filipino folk instruments with orchestral arrangements. The composer, Ernie de Aclos, crafted a theme that captured both sorrow and pride. Box office success. Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel was a commercial hit, grossing millions of pesos and ranking among the top 10 Filipino films of 1998. Critical reception. Critics praised FPJ's restraint and depth, calling Daniel a warrior who fights not just for justice, but for his soul. Awards. The film won Best Editing and Best Cinematography at the 1998 Metro Manila Film Festival. FPJ received a Best Actor nomination, and the film later gained cult status among fans. 8. Symbolism and message. A. Justice beyond revenge. Daniel's journey is not about killing the man who betrayed him. It's about reclaiming his lost integrity. The film's final act reinforces FPJ's belief that true justice is moral, not violent. B. The transformation of the Filipino hero. Unlike his earlier films, FPJ's Daniel is not a perfect hero. He doubts, he grieves, he fails, but he never gives up. This made the character deeply human and relatable. C. Society and corruption. The film subtly criticizes political corruption, land exploitation, and abuse of power, echoing the real struggles of the late 1990s Philippines. D. The power of forgiveness. In the end, Daniel's victory is not in defeating Mendez, but in forgiving himself. It's a spiritual triumph, the hallmark of FPJ's mature era of storytelling. 9. Legacy and cultural impact. Even decades after its release, Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel, remains one of FPJ's most respected late-career films. Inspiration for future heroes. The movie's themes of redemption and resilience influenced later Filipino action dramas in the 2000s and 2010s. Political symbolism. Many saw Daniel as a metaphor for FPJ himself, a man constantly tested by betrayal, yet forever loyal to the Filipino people. Cinematic craftsmanship. The movie showcased FPJ's ability to balance spectacle with soul. It proved that action cinema could also be philosophical, moral, and deeply emotional. Preservation. In 2020, the FPJ Foundation began digital restoration efforts to preserve Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel for future generations. Audience reactions. When the film premiered, theaters across Manila and provinces were packed. Audiences cheered during Daniel's battles and cried during the ending.
Many viewers, especially those who grew up watching FPJ, felt it was a story about their own struggles, the fight against corruption, the loss of faith, and the hope for redemption. One review from Pelikulang Bayan magazine summarized it best. FPJ returns not just as Daniel,